everyone. So, in today's video, I'll be talking about cardiac failure and circulatory shock. Well, these two chapters, I really didn't like revising them because they were huge, but now I realize that these are my favorite chapters because they just summarize and apply everything that I've learned in this entire huge block of CVS. CVS is cardiovascular system. Moving on, we're going to be talking about cardiac failure. Now, before we move on to cardiac failure, I really want you guys to know a few concepts so that you can understand this. Firstly, if you can, please go and watch a video on cardiac cycle. You can watch my video too. I'll link it here. Secondly, I'll be talking about the basic physiological aspects of our heart's pumping. Alright, so our heart pumps blood to the entire body. Alright, now every minute it beats 72 times on average, and every time it contracts, it releases about 70 ml of blood into the systemic circulation. Systemic circulation is the circulation that provides blood to the entire body. And pulmonary circulation is the circulation that provides blood to the lungs. Alright, so now systemic circulation, it gives 70 ml of blood. So now doing basic maths, per minute our heart can pump about 5 liters of blood to the entire body. And this 5 liters is called cardiac output, which is CO, and this 70 ml is called stroke volume. Okay, so now we know these two basic concepts of stroke volume and cardiac output. Now when cardiac output decreases, it isn't able to satisfy all the oxygen needs and the metabolic needs of the body, and that causes a lot of issues. We'll talk about what causes decrease in cardiac output later. Now let us talk about two other qualities, that is the nervous system's involvement in CVS. So what happens is we have two kinds of nervous systems, somatic and autonomic. So somatic is mostly for our voluntary functions like moving of our muscles, etc. And autonomic nervous system controls the visceral organs such as heart, lungs, etc. So this has two components, sympathetic and parasympathetic. Now the sympathetic nervous system acts through the neurotransmitter noradrenaline, and parasympathetic acts through the neurotransmitter acetylcholine. Now, its effects on the heart is important for us to understand the concept of cardiac failure. Sympathetic system acts on the beta-adrenergic receptors. Beta-adrenergic receptors are basically those which are accepting the noradrenaline, they bind to it and cause subsequent effects. So now it acts on the beta-adrenergic receptors on the heart, and this causes increased heart rate, increased force of contraction of the heart, and its second effect is on the alpha adrenergic receptors on the blood vessels. Okay, so can you imagine this? Just try to visualize. When noradrenaline acts on the blood vessels, let's start with an arteriole. So when an arteriole is constricted, obviously the pressure increases, which causes increase in blood pressure, increased BP. Now let's talk about a venule or a vein, to be more precise. So when a vein constricts, okay, just imagine this. This is the heart. This is the rest of our body. These are legs, just imagine. Veins are basically bringing blood from the legs to the heart. Okay, so this is going anti-gravity, right? So this return of blood to the heart through the veins is called the venous return. So the total amount of blood in the peripheral circulation that goes to the heart, to the right side of the heart, is the venous return. Now this venous return can increase by a lot of factors. Number one factor being the driving force from behind. That is, When there is venoconstriction due to the sympathetic system, it constricts the blood and pushes the blood forward so it can easily go into the heart. So basically, when there is venoconstriction, there is increased venous return. Now, since more blood is returning to the heart, more of it can be pumped, and this again increases cardiac output. So, as you can see, the sympathetic system in total acts to increase the cardiac output, and parasympathetic system, on the other hand, just has its effects on the heart rate. So, it basically decreases the heart rate. Okay, so these are the basic concepts you had to know to understand cardiac output. Now I'll be showing you a graph and explaining to you all the events that take place during cardiac failure. As I said, when cardiac output decreases, it becomes difficult for the body to function in general. Now, cardiac output can decrease in several conditions. One of the most important ones being the ability of the heart to pump blood is decreased. And this can be because of myocardial infarction, which is basically myocardium being the muscle of the heart and infarction being necrosis of that muscle. So there is reduced blood supply to a part of the heart muscle which decreases its ability to pump. So that is myocardial infarction. Or it can be due to valvular diseases. So as you know, heart has several valves which prevent the regurgitation of blood. Now, when these valves are defective, blood can't effectively be pumped from one chamber of the heart to the other chamber, which significantly decreases the cardiac output. And finally, we have anything like decreased coronary circulation. Now, coronary circulation is the one that provides blood to the heart. As you know, heart is also a muscle. It also needs blood to function. So coronary circulation provides the blood needed for the heart to function. Now, cardiac output can be reduced in any of these conditions when the heart is excessively damaged. Now, let us look at two different parts of cardiac output. Okay, so this is the first graph that we're going to be looking at. Just read the graph. This is the cardiac output, normal cardiac output being 5 liters, and this is the right atrial pressure. Now let me just explain to you the concept of right atrial pressure. I told you venous return means the return of blood from the extremities to the right atrium of the heart. Now just imagine the pressure dynamics, right? So when there is low pressure here, the blood obviously flows from a region of high pressure in the veins to a region of low pressure more easily than when there is a higher pressure in the right atrium. Hence, the ideal pressure in the right atrium is 0 millimeters of mercury. Okay, so the lower the pressure, the easier is it for the blood to go into the right atrium or increase in venous return, causing increase in cardiac output, right? Now let us start with what happens in a compensated cardiac failure. Compensated cardiac failure, as the name suggests, there is failure of heart followed by compensation that does not ideally cause death, right? So this is our normal heart. As you can see, the cardiac output is 5 and the right atrial pressure is 0, as it should be. Now suppose any of these conditions occur, myocardial infarction, coronary circulation is deficient, or valvular heart disease, then the heart's pumping is significantly decreased to this point B, causing cardiac output to be this low, and the right atrial pressure increases because all the blood that is returning to the heart is being dammed up in the right atrium instead of flowing through the heart, because now cardiac functioning has decreased. The heart can't pump this blood out. So all the blood that's returning is being dammed up in the right atrium and thus increasing its pressure. So this is a normal heart. This is a heart that just underwent damage, okay? Acutely damaged heart. And finally, now we're going to be talking about the different compensations that can happen. So now the cardiac output has decreased. So obviously the body's feedback mechanisms are the one that prevent our body from dysfunctioning very much, alright? So since cardiac output has decreased, the first feedback mechanism that acts is increase in the sympathetic systems. So, the sympathetic system. Our heart, our body senses reduction in cardiac output. That causes reduction in blood pressure because output is not there, so there's no real pressure on the arteries that supply blood to the rest of the body. Right. So, this is detected by baroreceptors around the body and chemoreceptors around the body. So baroreceptors decrease reduction in blood pressure and chemoreceptors detect the reduction in the oxygen concentration. And both of these, the primary effects they cause is increase in sympathetic system. There are different cycles and mechanisms for this, which I will not go into the details of. And you also have something that is known as CNS ischemic response. So what happens is there is one center in the brain known as vasomotor center that controls the sympathetic system, that increases the venoconstriction and arterial constriction via the sympathetic system. So this vasomotor center is in the brain. And now, due to less blood pressure and less availability of oxygen to certain parts of the brain, there is ischemia of this vasomotor center that causes strong sympathetic effects. Now, because of strong sympathetic effects, there is increase in the heart's ability as a pump due to increase in force and heart rate. And there is also vasoconstriction, venoconstriction that causes increased in venous return, increased in cardiac output. So all of this together cause some kind of increase in cardiac output. Another concept that I have to explain in venous return is, remember when I said there's venoconstriction? So there's this thing called mean systemic filling pressure, which is denoted by this. So mean systemic filling pressure is basically imagine the heart has stopped pumping and all the blood is stagnant in the entire systemic system. Alright, so the pressure at that moment exerted by the systemic blood on the blood walls is known as mean systemic filling pressure. And this mean systemic filling pressure, whenever it's increased due to venoconstriction or arterial constriction, it causes increase in venous return. And that is exactly what the sympathetic system achieves. It increases the mean systemic filling pressure. Now, this is the acute response, right? As you can see, due to the sympathetic action, the heart's pumping nature has improved and it has reached this point C. Now, how does it reach the point D? So now we're going to be talking about the long-term effects of this reduction in cardiac output. So when cardiac output is reduced, another important system that acts is the renal system. So reduced cardiac output. The sympathetic system not only causes all these effects, it also causes excessive retention of fluid by the kidneys. Now, how do kidneys achieve it? Basically, the renal system works as so. So there is increased reabsorption of water from the renal tubules which have been excreted through the glomerular filtration, etc. So when there is increased reabsorption of water, this causes increased fluid in the systemic circulation. And when there is increased fluid in the systemic circulation, that obviously increases the mean systemic filling pressure, right? And when mean systemic filling pressure is increased, there is increased in BP, and in general there is better provision of fluid or blood to the rest of the organs of our body. Now this is in moderate fluid retention. I'll talk about extreme fluid retention later. Now, the second effect that can increase this cardiac output is by development of collateral circulation. So as I told you, the heart is not being an effective pump. There is reduction in blood supply to the heart because of damage to the coronary circulation itself. Then you have something known as collateral circulation that develops in the heart. That is, other channels of blood supply to the entire heart musculature develop, and this is the collateral circulation. It develops over a period of time, and this causes recovery of heart from myocardial infarction or reduction in coronary circulation, etc. And finally, that's why the heart reaches this stage. Now, let us talk about decompensated cardiac failure, and this is what is scary because there is no compensation. As you can see, the graph just goes up and then goes down. There is no improvement. So the same kind of scenario occurs in this. Until this point D, you can see the cardiac output is increasing slowly, and it reaches this point T, which is the highest point. Now, in this situation, the only difference is that the heart is excessively damaged, right? The heart is so excessively damaged that it can never reach a point wherein the cardiac output is sufficient enough for it to function properly. Now, cardiac output should not only be sufficient enough for the other organs to function, its most important effect will be on the kidneys. So when there is not enough cardiac output, there is not enough filtration of fluids. That is, fluids don't enter the urine, they're still in our systemic circulation. That means there is constant increase of fluid in our systemic circulation and it's not excreted. And this causes excessive fluid retention, because our cardiac output can never reach that point that can cause filtration of this plasma or filtration of this fluid into the urine. And this causes the fluid to be continuously reabsorbed and continuously present in our circulation. And as you can imagine, the effects of this can be disastrous. So there is increased fluid retention. So finally, there is increased mean systemic filling pressure that causes increased venous return, and the blood keeps coming into the heart, and this causes increased right atrial pressure, constantly increasing right atrial pressure, which is very bad for the fluid to actually enter the right atrium, as I explained the pressure concept to you. Now, this increased right atrial pressure is what causes this decompensation. Increased right atrial pressure causes the heart to become weak. The heart can't pump even more. Increased pressure in the right atrium causes edema in the heart tissues. The heart is being overstretched, that it cannot handle any further increase in the cardiac output, and it becomes so weak that it cannot pump blood at all, and the cardiac output finally reaches this stage where it cannot help the kidneys to filter any fluid, where it cannot help to sustain the organs of the body, and the heart becomes worse and worse with more fluid being reabsorbed from the kidneys. Now, another concept that is very scary is how this cardiac failure can cause circulatory shock. Now, circulatory shock is something different. So, when there is such less cardiac output, the tissues of our body, they start degenerating. And this effect is caused by something known as cardiogenic shock. So the concept of cardiogenic shock is that cardiac output is reduced. This causes further reduction in coronary circulation. Now, when coronary circulation is reduced, that causes even more weakening of the heart. And when there is even more weakening of the heart, there is even less cardiac output, and that is a cycle that keeps continuing. There's again weakening and reduced cardiac output. So this is a continuous vicious cycle that causes cardiogenic shock. Now, when these tissues degenerate, they release toxins. Their mitochondria and lysosomes undergo deleterious effects, development of clots. This causes reduction in the ATP supply of our tissues. This causes reduction in any of the energy systems of our body, and all of these effects together cannot protect the body anymore. And the body now is in a state of shock. There are a lot of other effects that I'd like to discuss, but the video is going to get way too long. So let me just move on to one more aspect of it, that is treatment. So when our body is not in an irreversible state, it can still be treated. Alright, so one of the most important treatment here is digitalis. It is a drug that causes increased accumulation of calcium in the cardiac muscle, and that obviously increases the effectivity of the cardiac muscle as a pump. Secondly, we have diuretics. So diuretics prevent excessive fluid retention, and finally decompensated cardiac failure is reduced. Diuretics basically increase the fluid in the urine. For situations such as a cardiogenic shock, you can also do plasma or blood replacement. in case there is hypovolemia, which is one of the most important causes of circulatory shock. I would like to cover circulatory shock in much more detail. There are a lot of factors like hypovolemia, there can be neurogenic circulatory shock or anaphylactic circulatory shock, etc. But I don't have the time to. But if I really can, I'll try to make another video on a detailed breakdown of circulatory shock. But as of now, this is all that I wanted to cover. This is cardiac failure, and this is why it's very scary, because after a point, your body really can't take it. Your body causes itself to become worse in a decompensated cardiac failure. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.